Hello friends, my name is International Master Kim Steven Yap. I am from the Philippines and today I'm going to show you how to play the Evans Gambit as white. And most of the times this is a good line, especially against newbies because you will easily win material, you will easily win the game. You just need to know the ideas of the position. So let's start. E4, E5, knight F3, knight to C6, bishop C4, and this is the Italian game. The opponent plays bishop to C5, and here is the start of the gambit. You're going to sacrifice your pawn, and so I play this even against grandmasters, and sometimes I'm successful at it, especially in blitz. So black is an option. You can either take with the knight or take with the bishop, or he could move his bishop to B6. But the main line here is to capture the pawn with the bishop. And here you will continue with c3. And you sacrifice this pawn for the sake of rapid development. So it's a pawn against time. So you will have and the element of time at your side, since you are moving out your pieces faster. And in this position, the opponent has the option to play bishop to c5 or bishop to e7. But most of the players you will be playing with will play bishop to a5. And here you go d4. And then black could reply with d6, but most of them will just capture the pawn in d4. And this is a game which was played by Buffy Fischer as white, then Buffy Fischer just castles. And in this position, black also now has a number of moves to continue, but if he captures that pawn, then you will play queen to b3. And now he has two options to protect the pawn on f7, since that is white's main idea, capturing that pawn. So black has two options. It's either he plays queen to e7 or queen to f6. So this will be the main position that we will be dealing with in this chapter 1. And then white will just capture the pawn. So if you capture that knight with your bishop, not only you will lose an important bishop, but you will have a lot of problems if you play as black. Your opponent will be dealing with a lot of weaknesses, since now g7 is the main target. Now if you play f6, for example, I go bishop a3, and then you will have to play d6 in order to have more space and to free your bishop up. But I can continue my domination after I play rook to b1, putting your bishop to a bad square and not letting it develop. And my main goal now is to play bishop to d5. And if you try to play knight to e5 here, for example, if you play a waste move such as knight h6, the main threat again is to play bishop d5, and you will have to lose something here. If you move the knight now, then I will take the pawn on b7, and not only will I be able to win back the pawns I lost, but I will achieve some activity and I will be winning more material for it. So in this position, you are forced to play knight to d8, and then I could also play rook to c1 before I play bishop to d5. And maybe this is a better idea, since it will put a new pressure in c7. And since your bishop cannot move, your king cannot move. Also, it is important to note that you cannot win the pawn on e4, since I have rook e1. And that's a pin, and I will win the queen. Now, if you move your knight to e5, for example, then actually I could just take that knight, but I could also delay it. Maybe I could also play this move first. And if you play c6, I will now capture that knight. Since my idea is clear, if you take my knight with the queen, I'm just gonna take that pawn on c6. Okay, you take my bishop, but that isn't free. If you capture it, there's a double attack, and I would win the rook. And so in this position, if you capture my bishop, I would just sacrifice my queen. But it's something that I would win your queen back. So otherwise, you will have no move for your king. You are forced to move there, and now I'm up a piece. So I'm just gonna move my knight next, and then I'm just gonna continue my attack. So that's a nice line. Although black has 2 pawns, but he has a lot of weakness in the light square, and my pieces are all developed now. So that's what will happen if you play f6 in this line where you capture my knight. But this is not a comfortable position for black, since, again, although he is up 2 pawns, but now how does it stop the threats? Now I'm going to play e5. You cannot move your queen out, because queen c5, I will just take the pawn, and that's a discovered check. So then if you castle now, I'm just gonna go e5, and after you move your knight, that's the time I will skewer you. A barbecue towards your queen and rook. So after d6, I'm just gonna capture that pawn, and that's a double queen check. A discovered attack. And so you have to move your queen, and the rest is history. Or, in other words, easy. So now it is safe to say that when your opponent captures the knight, you will have a swift victory. So in this position, black has to move fast. Black has to develop fast by playing knight to f6. And then you're going to play knight to d5. And again, here in this position, your opponent does not have any good ideas, since if he move his queen, I think the only safe square for the queen in this position is f8, but that is looking so awkward. If you move queen to c5, am I able to trap your queen? I think I could win a piece now by playing bishop to a3. But also, even after I capture, that would still not look good for black. Your king will be exposed. But the best move here should be bishop to a3, trapping the queen. And then you will have to sacrifice something. And still I have bishop captures f7, and I can continue with some discovered threats. But in this position, black has to take the knight. So then you will capture that knight with the pawn, so that his king will have no clothes. And you have to attack fast now. And you have to make sure that it's a good attack. Something that your opponent will have no defender against. So now if you play knight to e5, then I'm just going to capture. More or less this is a forced move to play knight to e5, since putting that knight back towards the starting position, I will just go bishop a3, and after you play d6, I have a double attack. Then I will win the bishop, and that's basically the ending of the game. So again, you are going to do this, and after bishop to b2, the question is, where are you going to place your queen? In the Fischer game, Fischer played queen to g5, and after h4, if black captures that pawn, you will have bishop g7, rook to g8, Rook fe1, captures, and the winning idea here is to play queen to g3, and this is a removing the guard tactic. Since you cannot take the queen because I mate you, that's an intermezzo. And there is no way now you can control the f6 square. If you move the queen back to e7, it's free. You cannot do this since I'm just gonna capture it and I'm just gonna go back to my initial plan of checkmate. So in this position, you are basically eaten. So now you have to play queen to e7, and the best move here is not to capture the pawn on g7, although it is already a huge advantage for white. But all you have to do is to play queen f3. So then asking your opponent, okay, play a move now, play a move. But the problem is, now you have the threat of taking that g7 pawn following bishop f6. So it's a backup move. For example, if he plays something like bishop to b6, again, bishop captures is there, rook to g8, and then bishop to f6. And here, your opponent will lose the file, since queen c5, for example, rook e1, king, queen e4, and now the question is, how does he defend the mate? Also, if he plays d6, just take the pawn, rook to g8, just go back to bishop f6. If he queen f8, that would not do it, since now, of course, you know why. You cannot move your king, you have to block, and I will have two bishops for a rook, plus the attack is still at the center of the board. And king d7, that would lead to a swift death. Here, after bishop f6, queen d7, queen e6 check, because you no longer is defending the queen e3, rather the diagonal. Then after king f8, queen h6 is coming, and you are a little too late. So why queen f3? Also, because you cannot defend g7 that easily without losing material. f6, I have d6. Take, and this is the reason why queen to f3. Queen h5, followed by taking that bishop on a5. And here, if you castle, then I have queen to g4. My threat looks simple, but it is unstoppable. If now you play f6, then d6, and you are going to lose your queen, and still my attack is on fire. It's burning. So then if you play g6, queen to d4, and then again the weakness on the diagonal, my bishop is so beautiful. a1 to h8 weakness. Now the question is, it cannot be stopped, cannot be helped. f6, I go d6, check. So you will have to move your queen. For example, if you move it to f7, queen captures f6 is nastier. If you take the bishop now, a mate is coming to town. So that's how nice, that's how useful this preparation is, especially when dealing with newbies. So an easy point is coming for you. So results matter in chess, and in order to achieve result, you will have to have a nice opening preparation, so your opponent may be surprised after you play b4. And then again, let's just take a look at on how we deal with queen to f6. Then here we would go bishop to g5, queen to g6, and then after we capture. And if he plays knight to e7, then we're just going to capture the knight. And then here he cannot take that knight with the bishop. I mean, he cannot take the bishop with the knight, rather, because there is knight to e5. And after that, we are going to eat the f7 pawn. And that's basically over. So in this position, your opponent has to play bishop captures knight, queen captures bishop. Also, again, he cannot play knight to e7 because you're just going to capture, and after he captures, again, you will be able to devour the f7 pawn. So now he may play knight to f6, and then you are going to continue with rook to e1, I suppose, or maybe a better move here will be bishop to d3, planning to play e5. And now I'm not sure what black will do. If he takes that pawn, it's of course so easy, a very easy tactic, since you have rook to fe1. And after e5, danger is coming. So maybe you have to play queen to h5 in this position. But then I will win a free pawn, and your king will again be as exposed as it is already. And for sure, white will have a lot of ways to proceed in this position, because in this position you still have the initiative. The pieces are more active, and that's one way to win chess: activity of the pieces. So that is basically the first chapter of our Evans Gambit, and I will see you for the next videos to come. See you in chapter 2. Ay ay ay. Thank you and goodbye.